Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to Season 2 of the Pro American Late Model Series presented by Harpoon Design. Tonight, here out at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway for round number 5 of the season, drawing on in closer to the halfway point. Tyler McRae, the driver that took home the win at this track last season, unfortunately unable to make attendance here tonight. So we will just be looking to see a new winner here in the league for this evening. But before we can get on down to our main event and start getting all of that sorted out, the first order of business is to get these heat races knocked out to determine A, where these drivers are lining up in the main event, but B, who is going to make it in, because we do have more than 22 drivers registered in the session here this evening. But taking a look down at the starting grid, starting out on the front of this one, that is going to be the 12 of Mr. Kenny Tripp for Fast Track Motorsports, starting out on the front row of heat number 1. Starting to his outside, that is the 85 of Brandon Kiger in that ghost entry, rolling it off P number 2. Third place, that's going to go back to the 09 of TJ Moon, a driver we have not seen full-time here this season. Great to see him back out here on the track in that 09 Little Caesars entry. Fourth place, going to go back to the 33 of Mr. Shane Kohlmeyer, with PJ Thomas in the 28, rounding out the top 5 for our first heat race here this evening. 36, going to be Will Salamone. He's rolling it off in position number 6 in that brand new cylinder plumbing entry. 7th place, that's going to be the rookie driver here. That is Skip Lynn driving the 69. 8th place to go back to the track pass number 18 of Braden Fuller, with Derek Colson in the 5, rounding out the field for our first heat race here this evening. As usual, going to be the top 5 that lock themselves into the main event. The rest of them going to be bumped on down to the last chance qualifier, where they will have to race their way into tonight's event. But just like that, green flag up in the air for the first time at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, side by side all throughout the field here, as we head on down into turns 1 and 2 and 3 wide a little bit down the backstretch, and we go in 3 and 4, and just like that, drivers around, caution out on the speedway here in lap 1, turn 1, lap 1, turn 4, excuse me, of this first heat race here this evening. And I'll tell you what, that was some of our front runners involved in that incident. Let's take a look back here, see if we can't see what all went down. I think it might have started with that 33 of Shane Kohlmeyer. So let's take a look back here, see if we can't get a better view of what all happened. Sure enough, a little bit of a nudge to the back of the 33 is where it all started. Surprisingly, everyone did actually manage to get their cars going back in the right direction, but not how these drivers want to start off their first couple of laps of this heat race. Just a little bit of a nudge with TJ Moon is what started sending drivers around. Everyone else looking like they managed to avoid the incident for the most part, so not too catastrophic so far here this evening. But some of these drivers are going to be pulling it down to pit lane. Shane Kohlmeyer and Will Salamone both actually down on pit lane here this evening. So just like that, caution number 1 out on the speedway. Kenny Tripp, Brandon Kiger still making up the front row of this one. Going to be, call it about 12 laps left to go when we go green flag racing again. And that's the 35, or 36, excuse me, of Will Salmon coming back out on the speedway here. He's going to line up at the tail end of the field. Kohlmeyer also back out on the speedway as well. TJ Moon, though, still stuck down on pit lane in that 09 machine. He's going to have some trouble here in this heat race. Of course, not the end of the world. Even if things don't quite work out under this first caution, he will be coming out on to the speedway once again, if nothing else, for the consolation race later on this evening. That said, lights out on the iRacing.com pace car, so we will be going green flag racing once again next time. By Kenny Tripp, Brandon Kiger, the front row for this first heat race of the evening. As always, top 5 are the drivers that are locked in. That's going to be Tripp, Kiger, Skip, Lynn, P.J. Thomas, and Derek Colson. iRacing.com pace car is off. A rookie driver up in the second row. Let's see what these late model drivers have to offer here this evening. Green flag back up in the air once again. And once again, drivers almost considering going 3 wide into turns 1 and 2 there. Usually managed to back out of it. Braden Fuller side maybe. Not quite wanting any of that, but of course these drivers are going to be duking it out with everything they've got here this evening. Kenny Tripp setting some pretty fast outlines here. Kiger is not giving him any room to play with. Only about 0.2 of a second between these two drivers. And that rookie, Skip Lynn, just a little bit further back. Call it about half a second between the race leaders. But he's got himself a bit of breathing room to work with as well. About 12 laps left to go. It's starting to beg the question of if these drivers are going to try and battle it out for position here, try and get a little bit of a better starting spot in the main event, or if they're just going to ride around, let themselves be locked in where they are and focus about the main event instead. A little bit further back though, the battle for the cut line, that is between the 5 of Derek Colson, the 33 of Shane Kohlmeyer. Kohlmeyer on the outside looking in that 33, and he's going to get real loose off the corner, end up down on the inside wall. Kohlmeyer pushing just a little bit too hard there in that 33 machine. That's going to bump him down a position to Braden Fuller. And Fuller, he's got a full second that he needs to make up to catch up to Colson on that cut line. So Colson finding himself with a bit of breathing room now. As the last driver in the transfer position, he is down to be pretty happy about that one. 8 laps left to go though, still a whole lot of time left in these heat races, at least relatively speaking. And Colson's going to head on down low as P.J. Thomas rips up the trap. So P.J. Thomas now the driver in the hot seat here this evening. He's going to be stuck on the cut line, but again, about a full second between P.J. Thomas and Braden Fuller. That driver back in the number 18 track pass entry is the driver to be watching. He is on the outside looking in to being locked into tonight's main event. 6 laps left to go though, going to be the big high five going up in the air as we come out of turns 3 and 4. Kenny Tripp has led every lap of this first heat race, but Brandon Kiger is right there in that ghost entry. He is not going to make things easy for Tripp. Of course, it's important to remember this isn't just for starting position or locking yourself into the main event as well. Taking home a win here in one of these heat races does actually award you with a couple of points into the race championship. It's a very negligible amount compared to the points earned in the actual main event. But every little bit counts here for the late model drivers, and Kenny Tripp coming into tonight's event actually is tied for the championship lead. So every bonus point Tripp can get can help him just a little bit more to try and break that tie with Mark Whitley. 3 laps left to go for these drivers. So closest battle on the speedway, still the battle for the lead between Kenny Tripp and Brandon Kiger. 0.3 of a second separating these two late model drivers with 2 laps left to go here. Skip Lynn, a full second back from our race leaders now, then call it about half a second between Lynn and Colson. A full second between Colson and Thomas, and another full second between Thomas and Kohlmeyer. So the rest of the field getting fairly spread out here, but white flag up in the air one more time around the speedway to settle the score for these first set of late model drivers. And coming through turns 3 and 4, Kenny Tripp going to take home the win for heat race number 1. Brandon Kiger, Skip Lynn, Derek Colson, and P.J. Thomas all going to be locking themselves into the main event here this evening. Shane Kohlmeyer, Rain Fuller, TJ Moon, Will Salamone all are going to have to race their way into the main event in our last chance qualifier later here this evening. But just like that, next set of drivers going to be making their way on down to the speedway for heat race number 2. And starting out on the front of this one, it's going to be none other than that Harpoon design entry of Mr. Mark Whitley, the driver that is currently tied for the lead in the championship standings here this evening. Starting behind him, that is the 04 Tabletop Trio entry. That is Tyler Jobert, rolling it off P number 2. Third place can go back to that 83 of Chase Johnson, with Christian Tinkler in the 38, rounding out the second row. Back in fifth place, that's the Taco Bell 66 of Brent Mex, with the Sim Experience 26 of Mr. Johnny B, starting off back in position number 6. Seventh going to go to Wesley Ray Jr. in that 65 machine, with the 23 of Jonathan Emerson rounding out the second heat race here this evening. Going to be the same deal as the first one. 15 laps is the distance. Top 5 going to be locked into our feature event later on this evening. The rest of them going to have to race their way in through the consolation race. That said, it only looked like, if my notes are correct on the registration form, we only had 23 drivers show up, so it's always a little bit of an unfortunate circumstance to be in, but it looks like only one driver is actually going to be eliminated from tonight's main event. Everyone else should be able to make it in. Of course, if we have any new entrants that came in qualifying, that might change things up a bit. But for now, heat race number 2, going green flag racing. Mark Whitley, Tyler Jobert, your front row as we go on down into turn number 1. Whitley having a bit of an advantage down on that inside line. He's able to clear Jobert without too much to worry about. That they're 2x2 just behind him, and a little bit of a nudge there. Trouble for Tyler Jobert. He's way up high now. 3 wide down the front straightaway. That was Jobert, Tinkler, 3 wide down the front stretch in trouble. Christian Tinkler's around. Caution flag out on the speedway, and that is an expired motor on that 38 of Christian Tinkler. What an unfortunate start to that second heat race for this driver. Coming into tonight's event, after taking home a top 5 finish last week at the USA International Speedway, and now here on the second lap of his heat race, having to bring it on down into pit lane. And with an expired motor like that, that's going to be the end of his running here in this heat race. He's going to go straight on down to the last chance qualifier, and that's kind of that. I don't see that 38 getting back out on the speedway anytime soon. But while we get things sorted out here, let's take a look back at what just happened to that driver of the 38 machine. What just happened to Mr. Christian Tinkler going on down out of turn number 2. A little bit of a nudge with that Mobil 1 entry, and a little bit of nudge with Tyler Jobber as well. Just a hard impact on the inside line there. That was an absolutely massive impact to that 38. Probably one of the hardest hits that we have seen all season. But just a little bit of a nudge with Wesley Ray Jr. and Tyler Jobert was enough to get that car unsettled. And from there was not a whole lot more to be able to do there. What a massive impact for Christian Tinkler. That's going to be the end of his heat race. But of course, they will be able to get that late model fixed back up before we go on to our last chance qualifier. So, not the end of the evening for Christian Tinkler, but not the way he wanted to start things off here tonight. That said, before we get back to going green flag racing for heat race number 2, let's give a little bit of a word to our friends over at Harpoon Design. Alrighty, race fans, welcome back to the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. Getting ready to go back underway for heat race number 2 after a caution for Christian Tinkler on lap 2 of this heat race blew his engine after a massive impact on the backstretch. Going green flag racing once again though, Mark Whitley, Chase Johnson, your front row. Chase Johnson actually going to file on into the outside line here, at least for a little bit. He's going to go right on back down to the low side when we go down into the corner. Mark Whitley, the Harpoon design driver, leading the way for this heat race. And as we cross the line, going to be 12 laps left to go. Brent Mex, a little bit of trouble as he gets up into the outside wall, coming down the front stretch. Everyone's single file out for the most part there. Tyler Jalbert in that 04 tabletop trio entry. He was up in the top 3 of this heat race to start things off. Had a little bit of trouble down in 3 and 4 on the first lap. Had to go way high, and now he's back here in 5th, riding back on the cut line for our heat race. Everyone behind him, which is Jonathan Emerson and Mr. Johnny B, both of them have to get around that 04 if they want to lock their way into the main event here this evening. Otherwise, they're going to have to race their way into tonight's main event in the last chance qualifier later on this evening. Jalbert, though, he is not content with riding back on the cut line. He is looking to put the pressure down on Wesley Ray Jr., try and get inside the field, and maybe even look back into getting inside the top 3 where he initially qualified for this heat race. And sure enough, there's his opportunity. Ray Jr. getting up into the front stretch wall just a little bit. He's going to make the pass. Ray tried to do the little bit of the crossover there, didn't quite work out. And now he is back on the cut line. He has to worry about Jonathan Emerson and Johnny B back there. Currently a second of gap between our driver on the cut line and the rest of the field there. So Wesley does have a little bit of breathing room in that Mobile 165, but all it takes is one little slip up to bump him out of the top 5. Looking a little bit further up the field, the closest battle on the speedway is actually going to be the battle for the lead, and call it about a little bit over half of a second between Mark Whitley and Chase Johnson. Whitley, of course, tied for the lead of the championship coming into tonight's event. And it's a little funny that I was saying just a few moments ago that Kenny Tripp winning his heat race might be the little bit of buffer he needs to break the tie with Mark Whitley. About 4 laps to go here this evening. It's looking like Whitley might just win his respective heat race as well. A little bit of trouble back in the back there. That was Tyler Jalbert that just scraped the outside wall coming out of turn number 2. I'll tell you what, race fans, we're going to be seeing a lot of that here this evening. Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, one of those really historic tracks here on the iRacing.com platform that I was racing a lot back in the 90s, but not really in use all that much anymore here in the real world. Efforts underway to restore the track, but right now, not a whole lot is going on with it. And that means the scan here on the iRacing.com platform, very difficult to drive. They are driving on a very weathered racetrack here this evening. You can see how much these late models are bumping and shaking around the speedway. That said, white flag up in the air. Mark Whitley still holding on to the lead of this one in that number 77 machine. And coming out of turns 3 and 4, Mark Whitley going to take home the win for heat race number 2. Chase Johnson, Brent Mex, Tyler Jalbert, Wesley Ray Jr. locking themselves into the main event. Jonathan Emerson, Johnny B, and Christian Tinkler all going to be having to go into the last chance qualifier later on this evening and race their way into the main event. But just like that, drivers making their way on down to the speedway for heat race number 3. So let's take a look down there and see just who all is on the call here for this one. And starting off on the front row of this third heat race, that's going to be the 73 of Paulie Hartwig Jr., the driver who took home the win last week at the USA International Speedway. And mind you, this driver is just 12 years old and has multiple real-world racing championships to his name, so at 73, certainly a force to be reckoned with. He's going to be starting out on the front row of this one. Starting to his outside, that's the Dropping Bombs number 45. That is Mr. Mike Sukup rolling it off in position number 2. Third place, going back to that 42 of Dylan Hahn, another driver that has taken home a win here this season. And fourth place, going to go back to that 88 of Scott Benedict's, that Lucas Oil entry. Fifth, going to go back to the Canadian driver. That is David Cannon in that Menards entry with the 72 of Jonathan Smith, rolling it off in position number 6. Seventh, going to go back to the 6 of Tommy Mitchell, and that's actually the Menards driver back there in that number 6, not David Cannon. David Cannon's in that carbon fiber entry. And finally, 8th place going to go back to the 61 of Frank Hughes, which does not look like he is here on the speedway here this evening. So 7 cars going to be making up heat race number 3. And as the iRacing.com pace car pulls into the safety pit lane, we're going to get this thing underway one more time. Paulie Hartwig Jr. leading the way into turn 1 and 2. And we're 2 by 2 all throughout the rest of the field. Everyone on the outside line getting a little bit loose off the corner. Sukup and Scott Benedict's both having a bit of a wiggle on corner exit. Everyone's still got their late models rolling in the right direction, though, which is always great to see here this evening. And currently right now, David Cannon on the cut line, and he's going to get real loose off the corner again in that number 19 machine. Just behind him, Jonathan Smith in the 72, that Harpoon Design Racing number 72. Trying to see if he can't lock his way into our main event. 13 laps to make it happen, though. He could just make it happen. Currently only 0.2 of a second between Smith and Cannon, which is one of the closest gaps we've seen between the drivers battling it out on the cut line so far tonight. Smith going to go down low. Can he make it stick? Not quite. And just one of them, Scott Benedict scraping the outside wall. That's not what that 88 needs to be doing. Because every little bit of a mistake like that is just an opportunity for everyone else to catch on up to you. And when you are racing to try and actually qualify your way into the main event, these mistakes really do add up. Now the gap getting pretty drivers. Scott Benedict only has about 0.2 of a second to play with here in that Lucas Oil entry as Smith, he's going down low. He's going to try and make the pass on Cannon down the front stretch, and again, not quite the run he needs there. But he's going to keep on going for it. He's got that late model alongside the 19. Now it's just a matter of making it stick. Drifting up a little bit in that 72. Not enough to make contact though, but again, just not quite the run he needs off the corner to make the pass happen. But coming off that time by, almost a little bit of contact between them. But does look like Jonathan Smith is going to make the pass, and now he is on the inside of the bubble. Cannon on the outside looking in that number 19 machine, and he is looking with a whole lot of determination. He may have lost the spot, but he is not giving it up very easily. Going a little bit high out of turn number 4 that time by, but you know what they say, if you're driving in the line of the car in front of you, you are not overtaking the car in front of you. Again, Scott Benedict's really loose off the corner in that number 88. Benedict's does have a little bit of room to play with here, not quite on the cut line as we get the 5 laps to go from the flagman. But with wood goes like that, that is going to be putting him under a lot of pressure here. A little bit further up the field, though, speaking of drivers under pressure, Dylan Hahn is our new race leader in that 42 machine, but Paulie Hartwig is not going to make it easy for him. Side by side for the lead of heat race number 3. Hahn on the outside, Hartwig on the inside. And these two drivers really battling it out with everything they've got here. 3 laps left to go. Both of them comfortably locked into the main event, provided neither of them wreck at all in these remaining 3 laps. And of course, I say that, Paulie Hartwig up into the outside wall in that Exalta entry. 2 laps left to go there, and just a 1/10 of a second dividing these 2 late model drivers. Almost a full second the rest of the way back for the rest of the field. But these two are really duking it out here. White flag gonna go up in the air this time by Paulie Hartwig, giving Hahn a little bit of a push down the front stretch. Will it be enough to make the pass happen? Not quite. Heading down into turns 3 and 4. And it's looking like Dylan Hahn going to take home the win for heat race number 3. Paulie Hartwig, Mike Sukup, Scott Benedicts, and Jonathan Smith locking themselves into the main event. David Cannon and Tommy Mitchell going to be bumped back to the consolation race. And speaking of the consolation race, we are getting things lined up right about now for our consolation race. Looking like 10 drivers filling spots here in this field. 9 of them actually out on the track. It looks like Frank Hughes has officially retired from the event as a whole. So that's going to be leaving 2 drivers getting eliminated from this last chance qualifier. Taking a look down at the starting grid for this one, Shane Kohlmeyer in that 33 is going to be starting on the front row of our last chance qualifier. The 23 of Jonathan Emerson starting just to his outside in that Portland Glass entry. 3rd place going back to David Cannon in the number 19, the driver that we were watching so closely in that last heat race. 4th going to go back to the Track Fast number 18. That's going to be Braden Fuller rounding out our 2nd row here. 5th place can go back to that number 26 of Mr. Johnny V, with Tommy Mitchell in the Menards number 6, fittingly rounding out the 6th position. 7th going to go back to that 09 of TJ Moon, who had that unfortunate contact on lap 1 of the first heat race that cost him a couple of spots. And just behind him, that's the 38 of Christian Tinkler. 9th going to go back to the driver that is not out here on the speedway at all. That's the 61 of Frank Hughes. And Will Salamone in the 36 going to be rounding out this 9-car field. So a little bit different this time around for this last chance qualifier, going to be 20 laps. And the top 7 will be making their way into the main event. Green flag up in the air. And side by side as we head on down into turn number 1, Jonathan Emerson going to deploy the parachute just a little bit. He can go back a bit and let Kohlmeyer have the run. Right now, the name of the game is a little bit of survival. As long as you can get inside that top 7, you're good to go. And Braden Fuller in that 18 Track Pass entry having trouble on that start. Got up into the outside wall coming out turn number 4, and that's going to take him all the way back to the 9th position just like that. Almost 0.8 of a second between Fuller and the rest of the field. He has a lot of ground that he has to make up in these next 20 laps. Further up in the field, though, Johnny B and TJ Moon side by side battling it out for the 4th position. TJ Moon on the outside in that Little Caesars entry, trying to get his way past Johnny B so he can start to contest for the podium of this consolation race, which, again, the win in this consolation race also does award a point for the championship standings, which is really not a lot, but like I said, every little point counts. I mean, looking at the championship standings, we are tied for the championship lead here. and there are several more ties throughout the top 10, so these drivers are incredibly close here on the speedway in terms of points, and every little bit you can get will help you, especially considering that next week will be the halfway point of the season. Not a whole lot of time left for the championship to get itself sorted out. If you didn't have a good first couple of races, you need to get things sorted out in these remaining couple of events. A little bit further up the field, though, Jonathan Emerson, David Cannon battling it out. Emerson getting really loose off the corner there in that 23. Loose enough that now TJ Moon is getting up in here as well, and David Cannon stuck way up on the high side. He's going to lose the position to TJ Moon, who is now up inside the podium. Just like I said he would be battling it out for a couple of laps ago. TJ Moon up 4 positions, tied with Will Salamone for the biggest mover so far in this last chance qualifier. But as Moon makes the move down on Jonathan Emerson, they make contact. Thankfully, Nashville is one of the wider speedways that we've been to. Otherwise, that definitely could have been both drivers into the retaining walls. But now TJ Moon up inside of second in that Little Caesars entry. He's going to lock himself in so far as the biggest mover here tonight. And trouble. A little bit of trouble back in the back. Jonathan Emerson, Johnny B, both incredibly loose off the corner there. Both of them having a bit of a synchronized slide coming out of turn number 2. And now we're all bunched up. This is the battle for 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, respectively. In trouble. Johnny B is around. Johnny B making contact with Jonathan Emerson. That's going to be caution flag out on the speedway. And that could just be the lucky break that Braden Fuller needs to get back into this battle after a little bit of a mishap back on lap number 1 of this event. Let's take a look back here, see if we can't see what exactly went down there when that caution flag came out. Jonathan Emerson and Johnny B involved here, going down into turn number 1. Let's take a look back here. Actually, yep, that just a little bit of a nudge back to the 26 was enough to get it sideways. Thankfully, Johnny B did not impact the outside wall there, so not really any damage on that 26 machine, but not quite what you want to be having happening here in a last chance qualifier, because this is for all the marbles here. This is for the ability to get in to the main event here, so every single one of these positions really matters to these late model drivers. But just like that, that is going to be first caution flag out on the speedway for the last chance qualifier. And it's definitely shaken up the playing field just a little bit. Jonathan Emerson down on pit lane in that number 23 machine. He might have gotten a penalty from our race control here for incident responsibility. We've not gotten official word from them here, but considering he's just pulled it down to pit lane and is taking tires in a heat race where there is only 10 laps left to go, that might just be Jonathan Emerson calling it an evening here tonight. We'll have to keep an eye on him down there on pit lane. Still sitting down there, been down there for about 30 seconds now, so that might just be that for the driver of the Portland Glass number 23. I said lights out on the iRacing.com pace car. Shane Kohlmeyer and TJ Moon going to be the drivers up on the front row. Behind them, that's the 19 of David Cannon and the 36 of Will Salamone rounding out row number 2. Christian Tinkler, Braden Fuller, 5th and 6th. Tommy Mitchell, though, going to be the driver starting back on the cut line with Johnny B and Jonathan Emerson further back out there on the speedway. That said, Emerson's actually back out on the track. Emerson has called back out onto the speedway, and we have waved off the start. iRacing.com pace car is going to be coming back out on the speedway. Everyone getting on the brakes pretty hard as they get the word from race control to let the pace car back on the track. Looking like everyone just trying to get things sorted out. I don't know if anyone really expected Emerson to come back out on the speedway, but sure enough, that number 23 machine has taken tires in a 20-lap long heat race. Will it play out for him? I don't quite know. I guess he figured, you know what? I'm going to be sent to the back of the field anyway. I might as well make the most of it. That said, green flag back up in the air. 10 laps left to go, and Shane Kohlmeyer getting an amazing run off the start. Already almost a full second between himself and the rest of the field. TJ Moon just behind, and multiple drivers scraping the outside wall of the corner exit there. What a restart for Shane Kohlmeyer, though. He's built up a pretty considerable gap between the rest of the field, but TJ Moon, he has a very fast Caesar's entry here. Looking at the lap times last time by, TJ Moon was almost exactly the same as Shane Kohlmeyer. So Moon setting some pretty considerable lap times in that 09 machine. Actually, last time by, he set the fastest lap on the speedway with an 18.85. So TJ Moon, he has something in that late models that really is clicking for him here at Nashville. Looking back down on the cut line, though, Tommy Mitchell in that 6 machine is the driver on the cut line. He has a full 5 seconds to work with between himself and Braden Fuller, so Fuller might be having a bit of trouble. It actually looks like Fuller might have gone around in that track pass number 18, and he is pulling it on down to pit lane with 5 laps left to go here. So Fuller might be calling it an evening here as well. If nothing else, though, that now means that Tommy Mitchell does not have anything to worry about for the remainder of this race. He will be locked in as the final driver to qualify for our main event here. Further back up in the field, though, this is the battle for the second position. This is the battle between Will Salamone and TJ Moon here. Both of them about 7/10 of a second between themselves and our race leader, but they are rolling all the punches necessary to try and maybe somehow snag that bonus point for winning the last chance qualifier, but they need to work together if they want to catch up to Shane Kohlmeyer. They're not going to do it battling it out like this. 2 laps left to go here, and Will Salamone thinking about taking a peek down to the inside of TJ Moon. Not quite close enough to make it happen. White flag up in the air, though. One more time around the speedway to lock in these drivers to the main event. And just like that, coming through turns 3 and 4, Shane Kohlmeyer going to take home the win in the last chance qualifier. TJ Moon, Will Salamone, Christian Tinkler, David Cannon, Johnny B, Tommy Mitchell all making their way into the main event. Jonathan Emerson and Braden Fuller going to be the 2 drivers eliminated here this evening. So they're going to have to be packing it up, heading on home, and trying to get things ready to do it again in 2 weeks from now, as we are off next week. That said, drivers going to be given just a couple of minutes to get last minute adjustments done to their cars, maybe get a drink or a restroom break under there before our 175 lap main event here this evening. So we will give them just a moment to get themselves situated. So don't go anywhere, race fans. We will be back in just a moment with your main event here at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. Alrighty, race fans, welcome back to the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, and welcome back to round number 5 of the Pro American Late Model Series presented by Harpoon Design. 3 heat races and a last chance qualifier in the books here for the evening, and now drivers lining themselves up for our main event. 175 laps going to be the distance here this evening. Before we kick things off, let's take a look down at our starting lineup for this main event. Starting out on the pole, it's the driver who is currently tied for the championship lead. That's going to be the 12 of Kenny Tripp. Fittingly starting to his outside, that's the 77 of Mark Whitley in that Harpoon Design Racing entry. That is the driver that is tied with Kenny Tripp for the lead of the championship standings here in round number 5. Third place going to go back to that 42 of Dylan Hahn, who won round number 3 in his first ever race here of the season, of the series. He's going to be starting up inside the podium. Fourth place, though, going to go back to that ghost entry. That is the 85 of Brandon Kiger. Fifth place going to go back to the number 83 of Chase Johnson, with Paulie Hartwig Jr. in the 73, rounding out position number 6. Seventh can go back to that 69 machine. That is the rookie driver here of Skip Lynn. Eighth place can go back to Brent Mex in the 66, with Mike Sukup in the 45, coming back in ninth. 10th can go back to Derek Colson, Tyler Jalbert, Scott Benedicts. PJ Thomas, Wesley Ray Jr., Jonathan Smith, Shane Kohlmeyer, and a couple of other drivers rounding out the tail end of the field here, but green flag up in the air. 175 laps is the distance, and both drivers up in the front here actually got a pretty damn equal start, because they're side by side all the way down the backstretch, side by side all the way through turns 1 and 2. Little bit of beating and banging back in the back, but drivers up in the front here are completely tied with each other. Up at the front of this one, still with the side by side for an entire 2 laps now. Neither of them are going to be making it easy for each other. These are the 2 drivers leading the championship standings that are battling it out right here. Kenny Tripp, though, going to deploy the parachute. He is going to concede the position here. Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway is track known for having really difficult asphalt to try and work with for conserving tires. That said, caution out on the speedway. Just like that, yellow flag up in the air, and that's going to be the rookie driver. That's the 69 of Skip Lynn around. So just like that, we are under the yellow flag for the first time here this evening. And it looks like Skip Lynn is going to be taking the tow back to pit lane just like that. So let's see if we can't take a look back here, see what happened to that driver of the 69 machine. Looked like heading down into turns 1 and 2. A little bit of a connection issue there, and he makes a little bit of a tackle with the 73, Paulie Hartwig Jr., and that's how we're sending around. It's looking like Skip might be having a little bit of connection issues, and a bit of trouble there as well. Looks like he might have come back up onto the speedway. I'm not sure who that was he made contact with there. But initially, a little bit of contact with Paulie Hartwig Jr. Got further helped around by Tyler Jalbert. Goes around. Gets it on rolling again. And that is Johnny B and Tommy Mitchell he's made contact with. And just like that, Johnny B and Tommy Mitchell both are down on pit lane now. So it looks like both drivers got some pretty bad impacts from that. Not the way any of these drivers wanted to have their race kicked off. Johnny B coming back out of pit lane. Only been down there for about 6 seconds, so I think he just brought it down there to have the crew check the damage and see how things are looking. Tommy Mitchell, though, he is still sitting down there. He was the one who got the brunt of the impact on that caution. So he's going to be stuck down there for a little while, though. We have gotten word down from race control. The 69 of Skip Lynn has been disqualified for unsafe track re-entry. So that is going to be the evening for the number 22 in that 69 machine, making his debut start here with the league. And that's going to leave at least 20 drivers left on the speedway, maybe 21 if we see Tommy Mitchell come back out. Right now, 20 cars still out here on the speedway at the moment. Mark Whitley, Kenny Tripp, still the two leading the field here tonight. And I'll tell you what, if this restart goes anything how the initial start to the race went, this is going to be a crazy one for these two late model drivers. Both of them incredibly fast. Both of them have had some really solid finishes here for the league. And while both of them are tied for points, Kenny Tripp actually has not taken home a race win yet, but Mark Whitley has. So Whitley has just that little bit of an edge over him in that Harpoon design racing entry. But at the same time, we are 5 races into the season here, and we have had 4 different winners. Or, well, we will be 5 this time, but green flag back up in the air. We are racing once again. 9 laps is going to be the distance completed here tonight, and Mark Whitley going to be going on to an early lead here this evening. A little bit of beating and banging further back in the field, though, 2 by 2 for most of the drivers outside of the top 5. Currently looking at Chase Johnson and Tyler Jalbert and Brent Mex, all in a little bit of a cluster here, battling it out. Paulie Hartwood Jr. in that 73, also up there as well. That's the driver that took home the win last week at the USA International Speedway. The driver who comes into this race as a several-time real-world short-track racing champion at just 12 years old. And trouble, that's Tyler Jalbert around and Chase Johnson as well, and oh, that's a lot of late models getting involved. That's the entire track pretty much completely blocked just like that. There are more drivers involved than drivers not involved in here. I can see Tyler Jalbert, and it looks like everything from their back. So Jonathan Smith, TJ Moon, Scott Maddox, Chase Johnson, Will Salamone, David Cannon, Johnny B, Derek Colson, all stopped on the speedway here. And it looks like TJ Moon was upside down, so he's going to have to take the tow down to pit lane. And now the rest of the drivers that weren't involved in that wreck that are all having to come to a stop and take a moment to process what all just went down and let the track get cleared here. That's going to bring out caution flag number 2 on the speedway, and it's looking like our crews are saying it started somewhere around Chase Johnson here. Let's take a look back here. Look down at that 83, the driver out of Chesterfield, Virginia. Another driver with a lot of real-world racing experience. A little bit of a nudge to that 85 there coming through the corner, and that was enough to send him around. Tyler Jalbert involved in well, and then the whole rest of the field just kind of comes piling in there. Not a whole lot anyone could have done to get stopped there. All things considered, Chase Johnson, even though he was at the very start of this incident, he was the one who might have had the least damage from all of it. Let's take a look back here. Take a look from Tyler Jalbert and zoom out the camera just a little bit, see if we can't further break down what all went down there. A little bit of contact between the 83 and the 85, and then Tyler Jalbert actually makes contact with Brent Mex, and everyone just kind of comes piling on in. There are multiple late models upside down. That's the 09 of TJ Moon, and for a brief moment there, that 5 of Derek Colson was looking like it was going to go upside down as well. Not quite, though. That said, let's take a look back here, get a view from one of the drivers a little bit further back in the field in this incident. Let's ride on board with Derek Colson going into this incident. Heading down into turns 1 and 2, you can see Chase Johnson in that initial contact up in the front. Everyone starts to slow down, but everyone just comes piling on in here this evening. So just like that, caution flag number 2 out on the speedway. Drivers trying their best to get things sorted out here, get things lined back up correctly. Drivers starting to get waved around, though. That looked like the 6 of Tommy Mitchell going to be getting a lap back here. But we're getting lots of drivers being scored as a lap down here this evening from that incident. Several drivers still down pit lane. Christian Tinkler, BJ Thomas, both down on pit lane, and pretty much everyone from 11th on back had to come down to at least get the car looked at. The front half of the field still looking pretty much the same though. Mark Whitley, Kenny Tripp up at the front, Brent Mex, Brandon Kiger back in 3rd and 4th. Shane Kohlmeyer up inside the top 5 though. Kohlmeyer currently being scored as our biggest mover here this evening. Paulie Hartwig Jr., Wesley Everett Gray Jr., Mike Sukup, and Dylan Hahn all inside the top 10. Pretty much exactly as they were before that incident, but the rest of the field have all been turned up on their heads here this evening. Lights are off on the Irison.com pace car though. We are going to be trying this thing again here in just a moment. 17 laps in the books. Still plenty of racing action left to go for these late model drivers. Really going to be up on the high side this time. Kenny Tripp down on the low line. And once again, we go into the restart zone and the green flag back up in the air. Whitley off to a pretty solid start there. Everyone else still 2x2 behind him, but he managed to break away from that initial start. Currently looking back at the battle for 3rd though. This is Brent Mex and Brandon Kiger battling it out. Mex up on the high side in that Taco Bell entry. Brandon Kiger down low in the ghost entry, trying to make the pass on that 66. And X getting really loose off the corner there. A little bit sideways than he probably wanted to be. But it's like I said, Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway is a track that is really difficult both on these drivers and on their machines. You can see just how bumpy the are rocking, especially in the corners. All things considered though, when you actually break it down from a length perspective, this track is not all that different from the USA International Speedway we went to. Just a little bit of trouble there. That was Wesley Ray Jr. down on the low line in that 65. He got a bit loose off the corner. Managed to get that late model slowed down enough to not hit the inside wall, but that's going to bump him all the way down to 10th. And as Jonathan Smith passes him, that's going to move him down to 11th and potentially even further down as more drivers freight train around him down on that low line. That's the 19 down there. That's David Cannon, and the 36 of Will Salamone also taking the peak down there. So that is going to move that 65 machine of Wesley Ray Jr. all the way back to 13th. Just like that, a little slip up and down out of positions here. It's like I was saying, this track's really not all that different from USA International Speedway, only a couple hundredths of a mile longer. But the banking in the corners is just so much more drastic, and the asphalt here is so much rougher that it just takes a completely separate set of driving skills to be successful here at this speedway. Mike Sukup in that 35 machine falling back a couple of positions there. He's going to be Dylan Hahn there as well. Johnson going to be going down to the low side on that number 5 machine. And despite being involved in that second incident, he was actually up at the very start of it. Johnson has almost no damage here in that number 83 machine. He's still setting some pretty decently fast lap times here, and now he's looking to make the pass on Dylan Hahn again. And he has the speed to get down to the inside. Does he have the speed to carry it through the corner, though? Yes, he does. He's going to clear that 42 with actually not all that much difficulty here this evening. So now Chase Johnson down 2 positions from where to qualify. He started up inside the top 5 here, but still doing a pretty solid job to recover from that incident back on lap number 12. Further up in the field, though, drivers still battling it out at the front of this one. That is Brandon Kiger and Max battling it out for the final podium position. And right there, that's the 88 of Scott Benedicts, who is currently being scored a lap down after that incident. Scott Benedicts, one of many drivers currently down a lap here this evening. Derek Colson, Johnny B, Scott Benedicts, Tommy Mitchell, PJ Thomas, all being scored laps down here this evening. Tyler Jalbert, TJ Moon also being scored laps down. Though it actually looks like those drivers have officially retired from tonight's event, so that's going to be leaving 19 drivers still on the speedway. And we're getting prepared for trouble. PJ Thomas over it. Sub entry. He's going to get spun back around. Caution flag not going to come out, as it was a single car incident off of the racing line. But that is not going to be doing that number 28 driver any favors. He's currently being scored back to the 18th position, so that's going to have him ending up going another lap down, because there's our race leaders going past him right there. Mark Whitley has started to build up a little bit of a gap here in that 77 machine, though. About almost a full second between himself and the rest of the field, so Kenny Tripp might be playing a little bit of the long game here. Of course, as usual here in P.A.L.M.S, multiple pit stops are on the menu for these late-model drivers, so it is bound to happen that tire strategy is going to be a big factor, and Kenny Tripp might just be deciding to let Mark Whitley run away with it for now and see if he can't try and come back later on in the event. Considering how the past couple races have gone, I imagine that 2 stops will be the general consensus for these drivers, maybe 3, depending on how the cautions play out. And of course, a couple of drivers have come down under these initial yellows, but that's mostly because of damage from that track on lap 12. So I think it's a little bit too early to tell for right now, but we will just have to see how events start to shape up as we get closer to the end of this race. Further back in the field, though, there is a whole gaggle of cars back here. Some drivers on the lead lap, some not so much. That 28 of PJ Thomas being over high, he is one of those lap cars there. But still, everyone single file for the most part, playing fairly nice with each other right now. Currently looking down at that 19 of David Cannon, who's being scored back into the 11th position. Just behind him, that 36 of Will Salamone is being scored on the lead lap, and just in front of him, Mike Sukup, Jonathan Smith, both on the lead lap as well. Dylan Hahn also on the lead lap, Holly Hartwood Jr. on the lead lap, and Chase Johnson on the lead lap. So all of these cars are battling for position here, back in the mid-pack. And everyone pretty much under a bit of a blanket here, a little bit of a gap between Dylan Hahn and Jonathan Smith, but even then, not all that much. A little bit of a gap between Hartwick and Hahn as well. Everyone here all under a bit of a blanket, all battling it out for basically 6th all the way back to 12th here, up inside a bit of a bubble. And that's one driver slowed down on the bottom of the speedway. That's Scott Benedicts in that number 88. Looks like he might have had a bit more trouble here tonight, because he is going to be pulling on down to pit lane. There's definitely some damage on both front tires of that number 88 machine. I can't imagine that is handling comfortably whatsoever here this evening. Scott Benedict's currently being scored back into the 16th position, 2 laps down though. Going back a little bit to that mid-pack battle there. On Mike Sukup all here up inside the top 10. 44 laps in the books though. Still a little bit of room to work with here, but that is not going to stop these drivers from pushing as much as they can. Long race left to go, but sometimes you gotta set yourself up for success in the early run. Sometimes I'll end up coming away with my butt though, so just that variance and strategy that these drivers sometimes have going to be a big if on how it ends up. That said, we still have, looks like 18 cars still out on the speedway, 13 still on the lead lap. And side by side further back in the field, there's Will Salvo and David Cannon has got some serious right front damage going on that number 19. I think that's actually fairly recent. That looks like he might have gotten it just a couple laps ago. We're looking through the footage here. It does not look like we have any word from our folks over in the truck of what happened to David Cannon, but that is some nasty damage on the front of that late model. That is not going to be doing him any favors in the long run of this race. If we get a caution, he might be able to come down and get some of that fixed, but that's going to be a bit of a leap of faith for that number 19 machine, but still being scored on the lead lap, which is better than about half the field can say right now after that lap 1 incident. So things still looking pretty good for David Cannon, especially considering that he is up 8 positions from where he started here this evening. Chase Johnson coming down to pit lane though. Looks like he might be the first driver to be trying to make a green flag pit stop here tonight. I don't see any damage on that 83 machine, so I think this might actually be a scheduled stop for that driver out of Chesterfield. Will he be taking tires? It looks like the answer is going to be no. Sure enough, Just Fuel is the call for Chase Johnson here this evening as he comes back out on the speedway. He currently is going to be knocked a lap down from that, which is about to be expected. I don't think there's any track here on the schedule for the Pro American Late Model Series where you can make a green flag pit stop without being knocked a lap down. But Johnson's still in the running. Now it's just a matter of waiting for the rest of the field to come make their stops as well. But for the time being, he's going to go back to the 15th position. Further up the field, Jonathan Smith still in that sandwich between himself, Mike and that looks like Dylan Hahn, that 5 car of, I believe that's Derek Colson, not battling for position here. He is a lap down. But if a caution were to come out, he would be one of the lucky dogs. So he still has every reason to be pushing that 5 machine as much as he can. Because you never know how these next 120 laps are going to play out on the speedway. Ever since that second caution came out, though, looks like drivers have, for the most part, gotten things a little bit cleaner here on the speedway, rolling a little bit more the way they need it to be. So now it's just a matter of seeing who can make their strategies work out for us. But while we have a moment, why don't we let y'all turn up the volume just a little bit, kick back, relax, enjoy a little bit of this late model stock car racing. Race fans, it's time to bring the noise, presented by our friends over at Harpoon. 65 laps here in the books this evening, and more drivers making their own way down to pit lane. Mark Whitley, Brent Mex, Will Salmon, Paulie Hartwig Jr. all making their way down. Brandon Kiger came down just a couple laps ago, as well as Jonathan Smith, David Cannon, Leslie Ray Jr. So the green flag cycle of pit stops is here, underway. And of course, got to give a big thank you to our friends over at Harpoon Design for bringing on a couple of moments of late model action with that Bring the Noise segment. And a thank you to Brent Mex for the onboard cameras for that couple of laps there. Kenny Tripp, our race leader, going to be making his way on down to pit lane as well, with Shane Kohlmeyer just behind in that 33. What is the verdict going to be for these drivers? Kohlmeyer going to be taking tires. Kenny Tripp also going to be taking 2, and it looks like that 5 of Derek Colson actually going to be taking 4. Colson is being scored a lap down, so I guess why not go ahead and go the extra mile. Everyone coming back out on the speedway, side by side for Colson and Kohlmeyer coming out of pit lane. Kohlmeyer going to be in front of that one, as he is on the lead lap here. That just leaves Dylan Hahn and Mike Sukup up at the front of this thing that still need to come down to conclude this pit cycle. And both of them pitted under the first caution back on lap 12, so both of them should have a little bit more fuel to their mains here this evening. That said, it does look like the two of them are maybe starting to slow down just a little bit here, so I would not be surprised if we end up seeing them come down fairly soon. Mostly single file around the speedway. Dylan Hahn still holding on up in the front in that 42 machine. A little bit of battling going on further back in the field. That's Kenny Tripp and Mark Whitley, our 2 championship leaders, duking it out once again. Neither of them currently being scored on the lead lap as this pit cycle is still being worked through. But once Hahn and Sukup come on down to make their stops, these 2 drivers will be scored as our race leaders. So they really do need to be battling it out here to see who can make it back up to the front of the field when the opportunity arises. And side by side, Kenny Tripp going to make the move down on the low line. And Whitley going to fall back just a little bit and let it happen. 75 laps in the books, 100 left to go here. So not even halfway here this evening. And these 2 drivers, they have been duking it out nose to tail pretty much the entire event, and it looks like they don't have any plans to stop anytime soon. A little bit further back in the field, Brent Mex and Chase Johnson duking it out. This is for the 8th position currently. Mex going to make the pass happen without too much worries. Mex on slightly newer tires than Johnson, and Johnson came down back on lap number 49. Mex down on 65, and if I remember correctly, Johnson actually did not take tires on his stop, so Johnson might be trying to double stint him here, which is not something we've seen a lot of other drivers do, so we might just have to see how that plays out for him. And sure enough, one of the remaining drivers that usually comes down has made his way down. That's Mike Sukup. He's now in pit lane. He's going to be taking 2 tires. And that just leaves Dylan Hahn, who needs to come on down to pit lane at some point here in the next couple of laps. And speaking of drivers, though, there's Kenny Tripp, who has now officially unlapped himself in a little bit of trouble there as that number 19 hard into the outside wall. That's David Cannon. And just like that, Dylan Hahn going to be making his way on down to pit lane. He's the last driver that needs to do it for this initial cycle. So once Tripp comes back around the speedway, that will have him back up as our race leader here, as more and more drivers unlap themselves as the pit cycle comes to a conclusion. still 95 laps left to go here, so more than likely we will be seeing another pit stop anywhere between probably 125 and 165. I want to say is what the window is going to be here this evening. Our race leader, Mike Sukup here, battling it out with Jonathan Smith, one of those Harpoon design drivers. Sukup started up in 9th, falling back 1 position. He's trying to get that 1 position back. Try and bring home a top 10 here. Last season, back at the Speedway, Sukup was having a pretty solid run, had a little bit of trouble near the end of it. Looking back at my notes here, and Sukup walked home. Still inside of the top 10, but not quite where he wanted to be. Nashville Fairgrounds last season was a track that did come pretty heavily on down to strategy, though. We had a couple of drivers run out of fuel in the final couple of laps, and that was a really big shakeup for what we all were expecting the race to play out as. And of course, that was a race where Tyler McRae took home the win. Took home 2 wins last season, and unfortunately hasn't really been able to come out at all here in season number 2. But CA to Mike Sukup still out on the Speedway. He's up a position now, up inside the 8th spot, and looking to see maybe if he can't turn that into a top 5 here this evening. We've got word that Chase Johnson's back down on pit lane, though. So Johnson's going to make his second stop of the evening. It looks like he is going to be taking tires for the first time tonight. Kohlmeyer going to be joining him down here as well here on lap number 87. So seeing a couple of drivers start to work on a bit of an alternate strategy here. Maybe even try and make this a 3-stopper here. Going to remain to be seen how it's going to play out, but I do not remotely see Kohlmeyer or Johnson having enough fuel to make it to the end as it stands right now. Currently looking back at the battle for 4th, though. This is Paul Jr. and Brent Mex battling it out. 2 closest drivers on the Speedway here. Hartwig, who took home the win last week at the USA International Speedway. Mex just behind him. Mex has been a driver here with the league since day number 1. Not always racing for Taco Bell, but he has been competing here in P.A.L.M.S for a very long time. Definitely one of the veterans out here in the field. He's currently running inside the top 5, up 3 positions from where he qualified. And now he's starting to look to see if he can make a move on Paulie Hartwig here. Side by side out of turn number 2. And not quite enough to clear him. Sure enough, Mex going to be scored up into the 4th position when they cross the line. Will he be able to hold on to it, though? Paulie has a pretty decent run off the corner up on the high line, but he's going to decide, you know what? I don't feel like doing this battle quite right now, but sure enough, maybe he's proving us wrong here. Tried to go for the crossover, just not quite close enough to make it stick in that Exalta entry. I would not be surprised if he's going to try that again here in the next couple of laps. Both of them getting around that 72, though. That is Jonathan Smith, who is now being scored a lap down. One of the 2 drivers out here on the Speedway rocking the Harpoon design sponsorship here. And of course, as always, got to give a big thank you to our friends at Harpoon Design for coming out and supporting the league here. Really great to have a sponsor on board this season. But of course, if you are in need of a paint scheme, then be sure to look no further than Harpoon Design. Design and deliver one-off replications of your favorite NASCAR schemes or completely custom schemes based on your ideas or sponsors. Ready to get started with them? Just head on over to harpoondesign.com. Harpoon Design sponsoring the series put together paint schemes for a number of drivers out here in the field, and also will be putting up prize money for a random select few races here in the league. None of them have been announced. One of them was round number 3 back at the Langley Speedway, which Dylan Hahn was the winner of. Still remains to be seen what the remaining couple of races with the surprise prize money is going to be. But speaking of drivers taking home money, Paulie Hartwig Jr. took home the win last week at the USA International Speedway, took home the lucky starting spot bonus for the first time here in the Pro American Late Model Series. It got all the way up to $45 over the course of about, I want to say, 9 races. Paulie Hartwig Jr. managed to take it home last week, so that's going to reset the pool for the lucky starting spot back on down to $5 here this evening. And the driver that is up for grabs for the lucky starting spot here tonight was the driver that started back in the 15th position. Let's see if we can't figure out who that was. It looks like that is going to be the 72 of Jonathan Smith, who is down on pit lane, who is going to be the driver competing to try and take home the lucky starting spot bonus. So if Jonathan Smith here manages to win the race, he will be taking home a $5 cash bonus. If he doesn't make it happen, though, it will roll on over to next week and go up to $10, and then the cycle is going to repeat. Currently, Jonathan Smith being scored back to the 14th position, and he has been down on pit lane for about 3 minutes now. So I don't know if things are looking very good for the driver of that Harpoon design, number 72. Things are looking pretty good for the other Harpoon design driver. That is Mark Whitley up here, having to contend with lap traffic, 4 seconds behind our race leader, and he has Brandon Kiger right behind him in that ghost entry, who is battling for position. We did actually get word on down from our friends at the Harpoon Design Racing team. It looks like the 72 is down on pit lane with a blown motor, so that might just be his evening. And if that's the case, then that lucky starting spot bonus will be rolling on over to $10 next weekend. You never know. The cycle is just going to begin again. And that becomes its own little game of itself. Will we see that prize pool grow all the way to $45 again, or maybe even more? Or is someone going to take it home in the next couple of races? But for the time being, it's not looking like it's going to be happening this evening, as Jonathan Smith has a lot more work that needs to be done on that 72 late model, and he's already being scored 11 laps down here this evening. Still, though, currently looking at the closest battle on the speedway between Mark Whitley and Brandon Kiger. Kiger going to have to go up high, because that 83 of Chase Johnson down on the low line, and Johnson is sailing past these race leaders. He's on a bit of an alternate tire strategy here, and it is making him set some real fast lap times here. Last time by, he was actually faster than our race leader, Kenny Tripp, by almost a full 1/10 of a second. And just like that, Brandon Kiger is going to get around Mark Whitley. That is going to bump him down to the 3rd position. He has a little bit of room to play with before Brent Mex catches up to him. There is a lap car dividing the two of them. Brent Mex is starting to gain, and once he gets around that 5 of Derek Colson, Mex, who started all the way back in the 7th position, a driver that we normally see finish outside of the top 5, now is finding himself inside the podium and trying to contend for potentially even the lead of this race. And Mark Whitley is going to be coming on down to pit lane in that 77. He is going to be coming down for stop number 2. And it looks like Paulie Hartwood Jr. is going to be right behind him in that Exalta number 73. So more drivers coming down to make their stops. It's going to be cutting it close, but I think that if Whitley and Hartwood take full fuel here, they should be able to make it to the end. And with Whitley taking tires here, I think that might be his strategy to make. So that's not going to have Kenny Tripp and Brandon Kiger as the two drivers up at the front row of this one. Kiger 6, nearly 7 seconds back from our race leader. And as Whitley comes back out, he's actually going to come out right in front of our race leader here. So not quite a lap down, I don't think. Never mind, he is being scored a lap down. He is defending to try and keep from going 2 laps down. I would imagine Whitley would be pretty happy if a caution were to come out right now, as that would allow him to get the lucky dog be back on the lead lap with a freshly fueled and brand new tired late model stock car. But I don't know, these drivers have been pretty patient with themselves now that we are outside of that a little bit of a chaotic start back on lap number 12, so we might just go green to the end, and I don't know if all of these drivers were necessarily preparing for that. David Cannon coming down pit lane though. Cannon going to be making his 3rd stop of the evening, and Johnny B came down pit lane as well. He's going to be coming out now. Let's just take a moment to look down at the pit strategy box, because I'll tell you what, race fans, these drivers are a little bit all over the place in their strategies here, both inside the top 10 and outside of it. Kenny Tripp, of course, came down about 67 laps into the books, and now he's been out there for 50, so we could see Kenny Tripp be coming down to make stop number 2 here fairly soon. Brandon Kiger, Brent Mex, all on similar strategies. Mike Sukup, though, the first driver to be on at least a 3-stop strategy, came down on lap 14. That said, he might have not actually had any servicing done to that late model on lap number 14, because he was one of the drivers right in the middle of that incident. So maybe not necessarily. Same with Han, also involved in that incident. But as we bump it down the field, look at how the rest of them are doing, and of course it's just even more all over the place. Of course, some of these drivers either not on the lead lap or not on the speedway anymore at all, but everyone's trying something a little bit different from each other here, so it just remains to be seen who has the strategy that's going to play out for them if we manage to stay green for these final couple of laps. Dylan Hahn, actually the closest battle on the speedway here. He's starting to make his way back up to Will Salamone, who is currently the biggest mover here tonight. Salamone is up 13 positions here this evening. The driver out of Inver Grove Heights didn't necessarily have the heat race he wanted, and had to start all the way back near the tail end of the field. But now he's up here, was inside the top 5, just got moved by Dylan Hahn back down to the 6th position. And he does have a little bit of damage on that 36, which is not looking particularly good, but I mean, he's still got decently fast lap times here. So we'll just have to see how things play out for Mr. Salamone here with 50 laps left to go. He is losing ground on Dylan Hahn, and I don't really think that's much of a surprise, just because Hahn doesn't have any noticeable damage on that late model. But after that lap 14 incident, there's just so many drivers were involved that it's going to be hard for a lot of them to recover here. Just like that though, Brandon Kiger, Brent Mex both going to be coming on down pit lane here. The Taco Bell number 66 and the Ghost number 85. We will have to see what the plan is for them on their strategy as they both come into their pit boxes. And it's looking like at least 2 tires for both of these late model drivers. Will they be taking 4? The answer is no. And Kiger going to win the battle off of pit lane here. Just like that though, caution out on the speedway. And we're getting word that Mike Sukup is around on the front stretch. Caution number 3 here on lap 128, and Mike Sukup just had to take the tow on down to pit lane, so something serious must have happened to that 45. I don't really see any damage on the front of it though. So I'm not sure why he had to take the tow, but evidently something went wrong for him if he had to call the tow truck here. And sure enough, our race leader of Kenny Tripp going to be using this opportunity to come on down pit lane. As I said, let's take a look back here, see if we can't see what happened to that Dropping Bombs Racing Team driver. Heading on down into turns 3 and 4. That's the 38 of Christian Tickler just behind him, and a little bit of a nudge. They get stuck together. Sukup tries to save it, and hard impact to the front wall, but it doesn't look like his engine expired. He tries to back it up, and maybe he just decides he can't safely get back out on the speedway, and that's why he tries to take the tow down to pit lane, but caution flag's already out, so you might as well have just stayed out on track, I think. But still a really nasty impact for that number 45, so I would imagine that he would be down on power for the rest of the race if he stayed out anyway. Let's take him out with the ride on board with him, get an onboard view of what this Dropping Bombs Racing driver saw coming out of turn number 4 here. A little bit of contact there, they get hooked together. He tries to break it off, but just not quite able to. So just like that, that is going to be caution number 3 out here on the speedway. And unsurprisingly, almost everyone on the lead lap has elected to come down under this yellow. Kenny Tripp, Dylan Hahn, Will Salmon, Mark Whitley, Brandon Kiger, Brent Mex, all going to be making the stop under this yellow. And it actually looks like that might have been it for drivers who have come down so far. Of course, we got to get our lucky dogs sorted out here, get everyone in the correct running order. Giving race control just a moment to get wave around sorted out, get everyone all figured out here. So while we take a moment to give a quick word to our friends over at Harpoon Design. So as we get everything sorted out here, it looks like Dylan Hahn is being scored as our race leader in that number 42 machine. Lights are off on the Iverson.com pace car, so it looks like everyone's happy with how things have been lined up here. Dylan Hahn, Kenny Tripp, Will Salomon, Mark Whitley, Brandon Kiger, Brent Mex, your top 6 here. And it looks like that is the only group of drivers remaining on the lead lap here. 133 laps going to be in the books when we go green flag racing here. What a bizarre field we have here this evening. Green flag up in the air though. Dylan Hahn off to a pretty good lead right off the bat. Kenny Tripp going to make some of that ground back up pretty quickly though. He's going to go on down the low line and see if he can't try and battle his way back up into the front of this thing. Tripp was the race leader, led pretty much every lap of the race, except for when he was in pit lane during his pit cycles. Now looking to try and get back up to the front of this one. His big wiggle back in the back. That was Brent Mex, and I believe that might have been Derek Colson having a little bit of a wiggle. No, that was Wesley Ray Jr. Both drivers really loose off the corner. Mark Whitley, though, he is back in the picture in that Harpoon design entry up inside the top 4. And that's going to be Will Salamone up in third, who Salamone really cementing himself as the biggest mover here this evening. He is up 15 spots from where he started here tonight. Started all the way back in the 8th position. Now he is here running up on the podium with a damaged late model, no less. That said, will he be able to hang on to it is the big question. We still have about 30-ish laps left in the books, a little bit more than 30 laps left in the books here. Having a damaged late model like that is going to be a bit of a challenge to hold on to these positions. A little further back, Chase Johnson trying to make the move on Paulie Hartwig Jr. here. Both these drivers being scored a lap down. Just behind them, David Cannon really loose off the corner. Cannon being scored 2 laps down, so he's not battling for position. And the next driver on the speedway, that 5 of Derek Colson, is being scored 3 laps down. So actually none of these drivers are battling for position here, with the exception of Paulie Hartwig and Chase Johnson. Brent Mex side by side, just a little bit further up in the field with Will Salamone. Salamone looks like he had a bit of a trouble in the corner there, because just like that, he has moved all the way back to 6th. He was up inside the top 3, peeking into 2nd just a moment ago. Now running inside of the 6th position. We do have footage from the camera crew what all went down there, so let's take a really quick look back, see what happened to Will Salamone here. It caused him to fall back all those positions. Goes a little bit high coming through turns 1 and 2, and it looks like he just had trouble getting run off the corner. And that's going to allow Mark Whitley, Brandon Kiger, and Brent Mex to all get down underneath him. That said, drivers in our top 3 once again under a bit of a blanket here. Kenny Tripp, Dylan Hahn, and Mark Whitley, your top 3 drivers that have been battling it out inside of the top 3 for a large majority of this race. I'll tell you what, race fans, I imagine that this is going to be a pretty dang close finish here. And of course that 38 up there, that's Christian Tinkler letting our leaders by. He's currently been scored a lap down here. Actually, going to be scored a little bit more, like 24 laps down here, so Tinkler not having the evening that he was hoping for here tonight. Brandon Kiger and Brent Mex are getting involved in this battle for the lead as well, though. All nearly within a second of the race leader, and then there's a bit of a gap back to Will Salamone. Well, your leading drivers all duking it out here. Everyone under a bit of a blanket here, all nose to tail. No one trying to make any particularly daring moves right this moment, because you don't want to do it too early and not be able to hold onto the spot for the remainder of the race. So you gotta really be strategic on when you make this pass. You can't just do it now and be done with it, unless you are incredibly confident in your ability to maintain that position after you've gained it. Will Salamone having a bit of trouble again, though. He was way up high in 3 and 4. And while he's not fallen back any positions on the speedway, as he is the last on the lead lap, he is going to fall back on track position and lose about a full second on Brent Mex. So that's going to move Will Salamone to about 2.2, maybe. Oh, Salamone again. Salamone is losing pace really badly. He went from being 2 seconds behind Mex to 3 seconds in half a lap. And it doesn't really look like he's having too much in the way of handling issues in that 36 machine, so it might just be that lap car drivers are giving him a hard time. Lap cars that have less damage that pitted later than he did, giving him a bit of trouble because now he has fallen back to 3.2 seconds behind our race leaders and counting. But jumping on back up to the front, the story is about the same, and Mark Whitley is going down the low line. He's going to try and get around Dylan Hahn. Not quite the run he needed, but that's going to bunch up the field, and that's going to allow Brent Max to start considering trying to make the pass on Kiger as well. And they're going to make contact. Kiger's around. Kiger around the speedway. Caution flag out for the 4th time here this evening. Thankfully, that one, not one that caused any real damage. It looks like everyone does have their late models rolling in the right direction now. Nobody made any contact with the outside wall. Little bit of light contact for Kiger and Max under that initial part of the spin, but everyone's still rolling. I don't think Kiger is going to lose any positions on the track here, as he didn't really spin around at all. And Paulie Hartwig Jr. is down on pit lane, as well as Mark Whitley, Chase Johnson, Wesley Ray Jr. So our race leaders, some of them electing to come down one last time. The rest of them going to be trying to stay out, though. Kenny Tripp, Dylan Hahn, Brent Max, Brandon Kiger, Will Salamone, all still out on the speedway. But Whitley's down here taking tires. Paulie Hartwig Jr.'s here taking tires. Chase Johnson having a bit of a slower stop in that 83. He's been down there for nearly 30 seconds though, so Johnson might be having a bit of trouble. And Hartwig's also down on the speedway as well, still down there. Hartwig's down there now 35 seconds. I think that 73 driver might have had a little bit of a miscommunication with his team down on pit road. That was a long pit stop. He's not going to be on the lead lap anymore in that 73 machine, so might not have been what he was hoping for. Chase Johnson stopped on the speedway in that 83. Not quite sure what happened to Chase Johnson, though. He's got it rolling again. Maybe race control just told him he needs to go back to the back of the field here. The driver's getting things sorted out here, getting everything all nice and organized for race control for our final 20 laps of the event. Let's take a look back, see if we can't see what all went down to bring out that caution between Brent Max and Brandon Kiger. And you can already see the disaster starting to unfold here. Brent Max just barely into the left rear of Kiger there. Just a little bit of a nudge. And that will send that 85 around, but everyone slows down, manages to get their cars pointed in the right direction without any sort of impact with the outside wall, which is always great to see. So both these drivers able to keep rolling. Everything all good for them, except for the fact that caution came out. I'd imagine some of these drivers not quite happy that the field's been bunched back up, because that's just going to make their jobs a little bit harder. Kenny Tripp, Dylan Hahn, the front row of this one. That's going to be Brandon Kiger, Will Salamone. Then the drivers that came down pit lane, Mark Whitley, Brent Max, and Paulie Hartwig Jr. The remainder of the drivers here on the lead lap. So it's going to be 17 to go when we cross the line here. Let's see how these last couple of laps play out. It might just all come down to this lap pit stop. Green flag up in the air though. We are rolling out here on the speedway. And top four all nose to tail. Our race leaders making contact. Dylan Hahn really needs to come out of the corner. He's going to lose a position there. And again, a bit of contact with Hahn, that time with Kiger. With 16 laps left to go here, these drivers are really pushing with everything they've got left to work with here. Whitley, though. Whitley is on newer tires than everyone inside the top three here. And sure enough, as he makes the pass here on Kiger, he's going to start to try and work away at Hahn and Tripp as well. Whitley might just make things happen here on those newer tires here. And a little bit of contact with him and Han. 15 laps left to go here. 14 when we cross the line. As usual, the clock is ticking here at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. There is not much time left for the drivers to sort it out. Just like that, though, Whitley going to make the pass on Dylan Han. And now he just has to contend with that driver that he is tied with in the championship standings. Tied with him even after the heat races got played through, as they both won their respective heat races. So even right now, in this very moment, Kenny Tripp and Mark Whitley are tied with each other in the championship standings. It's all going to come down to how these next 12 laps play out to determine who is going to pull ahead into the last week of the season next week. Just behind them, Han and Kiger nose to tail as well. Kiger's going to take a peek down to the low line, see if he can't get around that 42 machine. And they're going to make contact. Han down on the low line, and Kiger's going to go around as well. And drivers all around the speedway caution flag out once again. Fish caution of the evening out on the speedway. And it's looking like we're going to have a little bit of a shootout to the finish here, race fans. I don't know if anyone had that incident on their bingo cards here this evening, but if they did, they might just be looking to win here tonight. Let's take a look back, see what all went down there. And it sounded like it might have started with Brandon Kiger in that 85 Ghost entry and the 42 of Dylan Han. Just a little bit of a nudge to Han. Han goes around, tries to save it, but then he gets a little bump from behind from, that was Will Salamone. And then once again, a little bit like that second caution, everyone else just comes piling in. Everyone trying to get their late models pointed in the right direction. We might have had trouble for Brent Mex there as well. Let's take a jump further back there. It sounded like Mex might have had a little bit of an impact with these drivers as they all tried to get themselves sorted or turned around in the right direction. Never mind, Mex gets sent back around as well, so Mex is not the driver I was thinking of here. But he does make contact with, oh, that's Christian Tankler. So Tankler, about 15 seconds late to the incident, but he's still going to pick up a little bit of damage from it. No one getting out of that yellow unscathed except for our race leaders here. So now we find ourselves at an interesting situation. Kenny Tripp, Mark Whitley, our race leaders here this evening. And not a whole lot of room left to work with here. Light's still on the Iverson.com pace car, so we will be going around, looks like at least twice more. So it's not like we're going to be getting a 5-lap shootout here when we go green flag racing once again. Kenny Tripp, Mark Whitley, Will Salamone, Paulie Hartwig Jr., Dylan Han, and Brandon Kiger, your 6 drivers on the lead lap here. We will have to see how these wave arounds play out since so many drivers were involved in that yellow. I think a lot of them might have lost their eligibility to be the lucky dog. Sure enough, here comes David Cannon. He's going to be unlapping himself. He will be put back on the lead lap. And anyone else coming around? There's Chase Johnson. That will put Johnson up a lap, but that will not put Johnson back on the lead lap. And I believe that is it for the drivers that are going to get waved around the pace car here. So Kenny Tripp, Mark Whitley, your front row for this 5-lap shootout here this evening. Of course, There are green, white, checkered. Oh, nope. Lights back on the iRacing.com pace car. We have one more driver we need to get put back around. That's the 65 of Wesley Ray Jr. Going to be getting a lap back. Also not going to be put back on the lead lap. That will move Ray Jr. to being 2 laps down here this evening. So 7 drivers on the lead lap. And with that caution being extended, we're going to be making that 4 laps to go. When we go green flag racing, I'd imagine Kenny Tripp, our race leader, not super happy that we had to extend this yellow. Especially because the lights are still on the iRacing.com pace car, so we're going to be having another lap around the speedway to get this thing sorted out here. Mark Whitley now going to be down on the inside line, Trip up on the high line, so there might have just been a little bit of confusion on where these front 2 drivers were supposed to be. But now the lights are off on the iRacing.com pace car, and just like that, that 5-lap shootout has now turned into a 3-lap shootout. So the pressure just got that much higher for our race leaders here this evening. Well, it's looking like the official lineup: Kenny Tripp, Mark Whitley, Will Salomon, Paulie Hartwig Jr. going to be your top 4. Dylan Hahn, David Cannon in row number 3. Green flag back up in the air, probably for the final time here this evening at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. Kenny Tripp up in the front of this one. Mark Whitley just behind. Paulie Hartwig Jr. there as well. All your race leaders under a little bit of a blanket, and we're 3 wide back in the back. That's Brent Mex, Johnny B, and the 19 of Derek Colson. 2 laps left to go, though. Caution flag out on the speedway. Someone just had a massive incident. And that's going to be the 83 of Chase Johnson around. So caution flag back out on the speedway. I hope you're having fun out there, race fans, because that means we're going to be going into a little bit of overtime here. Just a bit of an encore here at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. Let's take a look back, see what happened to Chase Johnson going into turn 4 here. Down on the low line in that 83, he has to check up a little bit. Up on his lid after contact with the 85 of Brandon Kiger. Had to check up for some cars getting loose up in front of him, and just a little bit of a right hook into the outside wall. That was a massive incident for the driver out of Virginia, and that's going to be an incident that ends his race, because we heard his engine expire there, race fans. There is not a chance that Chase Johnson is going to be able to get back out on the speedway here. Let's take a moment to ride on board with the driver of the 83, see what all he saw in that incident, because that was a massive impact going down into turn number 3. No surprise that his engine expired there, though. What an impact. Thankfully, this is, of course, a simulation. And as far as it says in the contract here, no drivers are harmed in the making of this broadcast. Maybe a little bit of emotional damage, but no physical damage, and that's what counts right now. Kenny Tripp, Mark Whitley going to be your race leaders as we go into overtime for the first time here this evening. And I actually believe for the first time here this entire season. So what a race this is shaped up to be. 3 drivers getting their wave around. That's Derek Colson, Wesley Ray Jr., and I believe that last one was Brandon Kiger. No, it was not. Let's see if we can't see who it was. Oh, it's Brent Mex. That'll do it. So lights out on the iRacing.com pace car. We are in overtime officially. So only a limited number of attempts at this here. If we make it a lap, white flag comes out, then that will be that. The race will run to the finish. If they don't make it to the white flag, we will try this one more time, and then if we continue to have cautions, then it will end under yellow. And we just had a driver's engine expire. Hopefully that wasn't anyone in the line. No, it was not. It was someone down on pit lane. Green flag back up in the air. Mark Whitley, Kenny Tripp, Paulie Hartwig Jr., Dylan Hahn, Will Solomon way up high in turns 1 and 2. Hahn down on the low line, getting around Will Solomon as he overdrives the corner a little bit in turn number 1. Well, the battle for the lead all up in the under a blanket. White flag up in the air though. And Tripp's around. Whitley's around as well. Everyone is around here. And we have the white flag out, so there's not going to be a caution. Who is our race leader now? Paulie Hartwig Jr. is. Dylan Hahn to his outside. And they make contact. And across the line, according to our timing and scoring, it's going to be Paulie Hartwig Jr. I can't comment on the accuracy of that one. I think that one might be something we have to defer to race control on, because I'm not entirely certain on that one. I mean, the computer should be right, but what an end to this race. And Paulie Hartwig Jr. is definitely doing burnouts down there like he won, so I think that he is going to be scored as the winner here. Before we pull everyone up to get an interview, though, I think we really just need to get a look back at that last lap, because that was all sorts of crazy here, race fans. So let's take a look back, see if we can't get a view of what all went down there. Let's break out a top-down view of this, looking at Paulie Hartwig Jr., the driver who looks like he is being scored as the race winner here in that 73 machine. A little bit of a bump there between the 77 and the 12, our two race leaders. Everyone behind just gets absolutely involved, nearly 3 wide going into turns number 3. And then that 42, a bit of a contact to the rear, but it does look like he's going to get it. Let's rewind that just a little bit, see if we can't get a slow-mo camera on that one. Because what a finish that was. It does look like Paulie Hartwig Jr. is going to be the one that gets it, though, but what a photo finish here this evening, race fans. That was... wow. I think that's all I really have to say to describe that one here, race fans. But that said, we will be back here in just a moment with interviews with your top 3 finishers of this crazy, crazy race. So don't go anywhere, race fans. We'll be back here in just a moment. Should be good now.
Let me check. You live yet?
Yeah, I just hit live again.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
All right.
You're back live.
Okay. Welcome back, race fans. Fittingly, after such a chaotic finish, we have a little bit of technical difficulties, but it looks like it's all sorted out now. And now up here in the booth with me, Mr. Polly Hartwig Jr. You got a win last week. You got a win again. 2 wins back to back, and the first driver here this season to have multiple wins to your name. How'd you manage to make it happen here tonight?
Oh, it's just all keeping your eyes forward. I'm really good with that in real life cars. It's all about just keeping your eyes forward. Yeah, the car was really fast, so we didn't really have a good pit strategy. Yeah, we just need those cautions. For because I was a lap down running seventh, and then that caution came out, so I pit for tires. And then we had like 15 to go. And then that big wreck happened, and then that really helped me. I almost hit that wreck, but good thing. Yeah, we just had third and just kept my eyes forward. I was gonna be a settle for third, but bad stuff happened. But really happy for myself, with three in a row. See what's going to go on for Irwindale.
Yeah, definitely a very impressive feat, especially for the youngest driver in the league. You are showing these older guys who's boss. So I'm incredibly excited to see you next week at Irwindale. Of course, before I let you head out and celebrate your second win of the season, the microphone's all yours. Who you want to thank for getting you up here?
A lot of guys, I gotta thank JT Curran, my dad, my mom, Bobby Geiger, K2 Shocks, Vazor Pools, Jersey Shore Contracting, Morgan Tinny Race Engines, Surfside Collision, BD, Paparowski, Ace on the Landscape, and First Horizon, B&B Paving, LaJoy Racing C, South Car Care, LBI, Pest Control, Moore Trucking, Velocita, BNR Fabrication, EMC. That's just all I got. Thank you,
Good deal.
and you
Thank you
for
for
putting on the
coming
show.
out.
Thank you.
And bring it on home back in the second position here tonight, Mr. Dylan Hahn. What a crazy evening it has been. It's been all over the place out on the track. It's been all over the place up here in the booth. But everyone managed to get it done, and you're walking away here tonight with a second place finish. How you feeling?
Yeah, I'm definitely super proud of that. I kept it pretty clean for most of the race, except for I think it was the second to the last wreck where I got a little bit of damage in the front end, but I was still able to limp it home in second.
Yeah, second place is no laughing matter, especially after getting a win earlier this season. Coming in tonight with 22nd in the championship standings, but I'm pretty sure this will bump you up pretty darn considerably here tonight.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I was coming in here not super confident because during the practice races I didn't feel super great, but um I was better on the long run and I was just able to get a good rhythm and um just get a good strategy and be there at the end.
Yeah, definitely seemed to work out, and Nashville is a very tricky track, but next week we're throwing everything we've learned out the window. We're heading on over to Irwindale Speedway. How you feeling going to one of those outside line dominated tracks?
I'm not really even sure. I've never really even seen the track. I don't even have it on iRacing yet. I have to buy it. I have no idea what it looks like.
Well, you might be in for a bit of a treat when we head on over to California in 2 weeks then. But of course, for now, I'll let you start getting some practice under your belt, let you celebrate getting a podium finish here this evening. But for now, the microphone's all yours, Mr. Hahn. Who you want to thank for getting you up here?
I want to thank my dad. Just everybody that helps in the real life car and just everybody that just believes in me and helps me.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out, and I look forward to seeing you at Irwindale next week.
Yep, see you there.
And finishing back in position, number 3, Mr. Will Salamone. What a crazy evening it has been. You've been up, you've been down, you've been all around, but you managed to walk away with a podium finish here tonight. How you feeling after everything?
I honestly can't believe it, man. It's just I started the race. I wrecked in my heat race, and I had to start in the back in the consi. Worked my way up to finish, I think third. You know, started the race, just, hoping to don't get in trouble. Sure enough, big one happens on lap 10, I think it was. I just got nowhere to go. The track was blocked. I got hit. I thought I was done, but didn't get any damage. I continued on, and I caught a big break with that caution that came out. I think I was about to get lapped, and then I went in, pitted the last time, took four fresh tires on, kept up there in the front, and avoided all the carnage. I brought home another podium here at Nashville. Did the best best career finish here last year, or last season. I got second. Now it's another third. So I just can't believe it, man. It was a hell of a race. I'm just glad I survived.
Yeah, I don't think anyone had tonight playing out the way it did in their bingo cards here tonight, but hey, you came
No.
into tonight sixth place in the championship standings. Your finish here tonight should definitely move you up inside of the top five, maybe even the top four. I'm not sure on the math on that one. But either way, you're
Yeah.
looking pretty dang good heading into Irwindale next week. How you feeling heading on over to California?
That's kind of. I last year I just sucked at Irwindale. I couldn't figure the track out. I don't know. I always come into these races just kind of expecting not expecting too much of myself. I just try to race guys clean and stay out of trouble, and sometimes it works really good. Langley, I stayed out of trouble, finished fourth, even though I got in a wreck. And here now, I got third. I've stayed out of trouble. I did get into Brandon there when he spun Dylan out, but I didn't have time to react, and I hit him. It was my fault, but it was on purpose. It was an accident. So, you know, uh, it was a good race though overall. So I'm just proud to finish third.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've got plenty of folks out here in the chat who are excited for your finish here tonight. And of course, I'm excited
Yeah,
to see you next week here at the Irwindale Speedway. But before
yeah.
I let you start practicing for that one, who do you want to thank for getting that 36 machine up here?
Well, I want to thank guys that I help out in real life. Raising Cane Racing, Brent and Nate. They've been racing for 20 years now. I joined their team 5 years ago. It's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. So I want to thank them so much for everything, and can't wait to start our season in May.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out. Congratulations on the podium finish, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes, thank you, Aiden.
You heard it here, race fans. Interviews with your top three finishers here tonight. What a crazy evening it has been all over the place for all of these late model drivers. Before we sign things off, though, let's take a look down at our race results here this evening. Polly Hartwig Jr. gonna take home his second win of the season here tonight in that number 73 machine. Just behind him, that's the 42 of Dylan Hahn, with Will Salamone rounding out the top three. Of course, gotta reiterate, these are the unofficial race results, because with that finish being how it is, I wouldn't be surprised if race control needs to take a little bit of time to consider everything. So I'm not going to make any judgment calls here. This is just what iRacing says happened, and we'll go from there as the week progresses. Fourth place could go back to Brent Max in that 66, with Kenny Tripp rounding out the top five for Fast Track Motorsports. Sixth gonna go back to David Cannon, with Mark Whitley in the 77, bringing it on home in seventh. Eighth gonna go back to the 85 of Brandon Kiger, with Wesley Ray Jr. back in ninth, and Derek Colson rounding out the top 10. 11th gonna go back to Mr. Johnny B, with Chase Johnson, Tommy Mitchell, PJ Thomas, and Christian Tinkler rounding out the top 15 here this evening. 16th gonna go back to Mike Sukup in the 45, Jonathan Smith in the 72 and 17th. 18th to Scott Bendix in the 88. 19th to the tabletop trio 04 of Tyler Jalbert. TJ Moon in the 09, bringing it back in 20th. 21st to Shane Kohlmeyer here this evening, and the rookie driver of Skip Lynn in the 69, bringing it home 22nd here this evening. And of course, gotta take a moment to announce our random finishing spot bonus. that is going to be the driver that finished 11th. That's going to be Mr. Johnny B, taking home a $5 bonus for a lucky roll of the dice here this evening. But for now, a big thank you from everyone here at the Pro American Late Model Series. A thank you from me up in the broadcast booth. A thank you from our friends over at Harpoon Design for everyone coming out and supporting the league. What a crazy race it has been. Next week, though, going to be taking the week off, so a week after that, we will be returning with your regularly scheduled P.A.L.M.S racing. Irwindale Speedway going to be up for grabs at round number 6. Drivers going to be throwing out everything they've learned so far this season to be taking on a whole new beast for that halfway point of the season. But for now, that's all we've got here from the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a good rest of your evening, race fans.